Там наши работают, наши.
Russian army soldiers who were trying to evacuate damaged vehicles in the occupied territory of Donetsk region have been attacked by a Ukrainian drone. The footage was filmed by Russian soldiers and distributed on Telegram channels. Seeing the approaching drone, the Russian soldiers opened fire from small arms and tried to shoot it down. As a result, the drone exploded near the soldiers and hit the ground, injuring one of the soldiers.
Там наши работают, наши. Смотрим. Идет! Идет! Не знаю, шумит. Кто пошел? Вон! Ай, блядь! Меня задело, блядь! А? Давай это! Так тащим ее, так!
Geolocated footage from March 27 showed units of the 51st and 137th Airborne Regiments, which recently captured Gogolevka and the Sudza checkpoint. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War have voiced the situation in the Kursk and Sumy regions over the past 24 hours. Thus, additional geolocated footage from March 25 showed the advancement of the Russian armed forces in the northeastern part of Basavka. Russian war correspondents also write about the advance of Putin's army to the southwest of Gogolevka, in the northern part of Gavo and towards Oleshnya. Also, the Russian armed forces allegedly captured a position of the Ukrainian armed forces in the area of Vladimirovka. Some Z-publics also write that the Ukrainian armed forces are holding their positions in Oleshnya and Gornal. At the same time, fighting continues in the area of Gogolivka, Oleshnya, Zurovka, Basavka, Veselovka and Vladimirovka. And Russian media write about a counterattack by Ukrainian forces in the area of Gavo. The Korean agency Yonhap reported that in the period from January to February, the DPRK transferred about 3,000 military personnel to the territory of the Russian Federation. Pyongyang also provided the Russian Federation with new ballistic missiles, self-propelled guns and multiple rocket launchers. On March 26, the General Staff of Ukraine reported the destruction of the command post of the 9th Motorized Rifle Regiment in the area of Viktorovka and Uspanovka in the Kursk region. The commander of the 1st Battalion of the 9th Motorized Rifle Regiment went to Kobzon. Earlier, media reported that, despite the ceasefire, the Russian Federation continues to strike civilian and energy facilities in Ukraine. Over the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have managed to eliminate 1,860 Russian invaders. In addition, the armed forces of Ukraine have neutralized 17 tanks, 61 armored combat vehicles, and 122 artillery systems. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that 209 clashes were recorded over the past 24 hours. The Russian army carried out 98 airstrikes on the positions of Ukrainian units and settlements, dropping 157 guided bombs. Aviation, missile troops, and artillery of the defense forces struck 27 areas of personnel concentration, 8 artillery systems, 4 air defense systems, and 2 enemy UAV control points, General Staff says. The detailed report highlights the fierce engagements, airstrikes, and attacks, shedding light on the ongoing conflict between the Russian and Ukrainian forces. On the Kharkiv front, Russian forces attempted to breach Ukrainian defensive lines 6 times, targeting the areas of Vovchansk and Fyholivka. On the Kupiansk front, there were 26 Russian attacks. Ukrainian defenders repelled assaults near the settlements of Stepova Novoselivka and Zarazov and towards Petropavlivka, Pishchain, Nova Krylyakivka and Bohuslavka. On the Lyman front, Russian troops launched 32 attacks in attempts to break through near the settlements of Nadia, Kolodyazy, Mern and Yampolivka and towards Novoserhivka, Nov, Alhivka, Dranivka and Hryhorivka. On the Siversk front, Ukrainian defenders stopped 3 Russian assaults near the settlements of Bilohorivka and Verkhnokamiensk. On the Kramatorsk front, Russian troops launched 4 attacks near the settlements of Chasiv Yar and Pretekine. On the Toretsk front, 24 assaults were carried out near the settlements of Krimsk, Ozeryanivka, Kurdyamivka and Toretsk and towards Delyivka, Leonidivka, and Sherbanivka. On the Pokrovsk front, Ukrainian troops repelled 68 Russian assaults near the settlements of Pantelymonivka, Oleksandropil, Vodiandru, Yelizavetivka, Lisivka, Sukhyi Yar, Kotline, Yudakny, Uspanivka, Preobrazhenka and Andrivka and towards Malinivka and Novolexandrivka. On the Novopavlivka front, the Russians launched 14 attacks near the settlements of Konstantinopol, Rozliv, Skudin, Dniproeneria and Berlitsk. On the Huliapol front, Ukrainian defenders repelled 9 Russian assaults near the settlements of Priviln and Novosilka and towards Viln Pol. On the Orikhiv front, 4 attacks were recorded towards the settlements of Sherbaki, Lobkov and Kamiensk. No combat engagements were reported on the Pridniprovsk front in the past day. On the Volyn and Politia fronts, there were no signs of Russian offensive groups being formed. French President Emmanuel Macron has threatened Russian leader Vladimir Putin with war. He noted that a war between Europe and Russia is not out of the question. The reason for such a war could be Russia's own actions. Macron said that a proposed European armed force for possible deployment in Ukraine in tandem with an eventual peace deal could respond to a Russian attack if Moscow launched one. French president spoke after talks with Ukraine's president and ahead of a summit in Paris of some 30 nations on Thursday that will discuss the proposed force for Ukraine that Macron suggested could be deployed in important towns and elsewhere. If there was again a generalized aggression against Ukrainian soil, these armies would, in fact, be under attack, and then it's our usual framework of engagement, Macron said. Our soldiers, when they are engaged and deployed, are there to react and respond to the decisions of the commander-in-chief and, if they are in a conflict situation, to respond to it. Macron, together with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has been driving an effort to build a coalition of nations willing in one way or another to support the deployment of an armed force in Ukraine, with the aim of securing a lasting peace by dissuading Russia from attacking the country again. Macron didn't specify what sort of response he envisaged in the eventuality of a Russian attack. He said the proposed European forces wouldn't be stationed on the front lines in Ukraine, nor be engaged on the first day opposite Russian forces. They would be forces that dissuade the Russians from attacking again. And by holding important towns, strategic bases, mark the clear support from several European governments and allies, he said. So we are not on the front lines, we don't go to fight, but we are there to guarantee a lasting peace. It's a pacifist approach, he said. The only ones who would, at that moment, trigger a conflict, a bellicose situation, would be the Russians if they decided again to launch an aggression. The 27 leaders gathered in Paris, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, outgoing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, agreed they would not soften sanctions until peace was achieved, French President Emmanuel Macron told reporters. He said he hoped Putin would sign up to the ceasefire deal, but if not, that Trump would see through Russia's stalling tactics. President Trump is waiting for a clear answer from the Russians, Macron said. If he has the clear message the Russians are not coming to the table, he will feel deceived, betrayed. And he would have to react.